All right. What is good, YouTube family? Hopefully, you guys are doing absolutely amazing today. Today, we're going to be going into our thoughts on what transpired last week, right? Talk about also kind of just like what we were looking for, what happened with NFP, and then go ahead and go into what we can potentially see for this upcoming week. All right, so let's go ahead and start off with last week's Wyckoff Sundays. So we can see here, really what the idea was that we were looking for was firstly our target for 102 on dollar obviously still has not been hit, right? Very, very close, right? We got up to 101.80. And again, we've been talking about 102 for months, right? So that target, I think, potentially still in play. We're going to see when we can really start to head towards there. But, as of right now, what we spoke about last week was that likely what we wanted to see was for a dollar to get lower, right? Get back into some of these other areas, reaccumulate and continue to go to the upside. One or two, we were kind of playing with the idea that this could also be basically, an accumulation here, right? Obviously, it ended up reacting there once, but did not hold there long term, right? So I think that was kind of what we were debating between, right? Was either one, are we gonna just continue? Are we basically just gonna come back into here and then continue, or two, are we gonna actually start to get lower price action? Now, what ended up happening was we did end up holding this low, right? We ended up coming up and essentially sweeping through some internal points of liquidity and getting back into the areas that kind of had us worried for potential downside, right? So we saw here how last week there was like this sweep, right? And then there was also this sweep here. So I believe we did speak about that last week while we were on session, was the potential for a dollar to head down because of that. And basically from there, obviously reaccumulate because we're still not at our 102 target, right? Let's go ahead and see if I can find that part. I'm into a good zone there, at least on the 1 hour is more of a wake, but the 30-minute, we get a real, right? Now with EU, again, we bought it. Just keep imbalances down here. So either or, leave, but I started to show those manipulations at the top. I think these manipulations here at the top they look good and everything, but I think they will end up being distributions that will turn into reaccumulations. And again, I'm going to leave this imbalance here because I'd really love to see that get re-hit. We also have imbalances down here. So either or could potentially happen, right? Yeah, just keep an eye out to see how price opens up in the next couple of hours. So essentially, again, price did open up. We can go ahead and take a look at what happened with dollar during that week, right? So obviously we can see here, we ended up leaving some super equal highs here, right? Price came back down, right? Retraced back into the extreme area there and then head back up. Once again, came back down, still not breaking that low, and then went all the way back up. So I think having price get close to taking the lows but not taking it was definitely a bit of a hint and a bit of liquidity generation to go ahead and just bring us to the upside to then, again, buy to sell motion, to do that buy to sell, right? Especially the equal highs here definitely gave that hint that we could do another high. And then obviously, going ahead and taking that internal point of liquidity. But the main reasons of why we were really looking for that downside to continue was because, again, this push to the upside here, right? We got a beautiful institutional candle here at the top, right? Another point of manipulation right here, liquidity basically building up in those levels. And then from there, we saw price come down. So this is where we were when the market opened. And then, yeah, we did manage to bounce off. There were definitely some buy opportunities from that level that we spoke about. But again, our bigger time frame and our first idea with this was to really get this come lower, right? Now we got very close, right? And we'll talk about this later on, but that was the idea. That's how it played out, right? I definitely think the sells could have made sense on the Wednesday, as we could see here. Like I believe both of these were on Wednesday. So we have this one at the top here was on Wednesday at about New York session open, and then this is also Wednesday during Asian session, right? At least EST Wednesday, right? So yeah, definitely very clean, move down as well. Some opportunity there, and then NFP happened right here, right? So NFP was definitely a beautiful sell-off, caused some huge moves on things like currency, gold, right? And stuff like that, right? So a lot of those saw rallies because of that push to the downside there on dollar. So, we kind of got it right on one side, to go ahead and see dollar come lower, but we still haven't seen that rally that we were hoping to see. We were kind of hoping it could happen in the same week, but yeah, not so far, right? Next thing we spoke about was EU. Now EU, kind of similar to how dollar has some good candles in that area. Like good zone here, right? Before we offer three to the same relative highs on each. So yeah, EU here, basically the idea was, if we were going to hold that same level on dollar, to maybe see that to be, a zone to sell from, right? As you can see, price ended up just barely coming above there. And when that did happen, I did actually end up taking a position on Euro USD at this point. After we did take the high and we kind of showed the potential for a type 3. So I did manage to get like basically take a little bit of advantage of that buy up that did happen. That was basically at this moment here. I didn't hold it the whole way. I believe I closed it like somewhere down here or something like that. But yeah, it was still a really, really good move, for a potential type 3 setup. And, after that, we made another high, right? So we saw the market go ahead, sweep some of the liquidity that I was looking to target, right? And then from there, after sweeping it, we went ahead and went up, and now taking out all of these levels here, right? So we did speak about the potential for price going ahead and taking this high out before then seeing the sell-off. We'll see if that can still happen into the future. But yeah, essentially put, right, we had a sweep on one side, sweep on the other side, and then we made a higher high. So not really too much here in terms of bigger time frame reversal just yet, kind of still holding the trend from Wyckoff Sundays that we already saw. So nothing too crazy right there for EU. Potentially, hopefully we can see something for this current week coming up, right? NU was a little bit different. I think we said we were going to back off of NU and AU because they had been in a much different structure compared to everything else. Let's see what I said here. Most of the pairs have really ripped through, the previous targets that we spoke about last week. So but dollar hasn't. So I do still think dollar will continue to go to, if it is going to come, if the war is going to end soon, then it'll probably be above 102 or big order started with. We're starting to slowly make our way higher, Maybe we end up getting one more, which would be kind of like my most ideal scenario. So yeah, that is what we wanted to see with Euro USD, another push up. Same thing with GU. I believe we looked at this zone here, right? So let's take a look at GU, and yeah, so price did end up ripping through there, right? So for GU, right, this redistribution here didn't hold up, right? Which makes sense. I mean, we did have this low here get swept, and we also had the target, higher time frame target on GU get hit as well, just barely. And then again, we start to see like sweeps happening, which I believe we did talk about last week as well, was like these lows here that have been holding so far. And then after that, we were saying, all right, maybe when we do get back into this level, we can see some selling happen, right? But GU overall looking much more bullish compared to EU at least. So we'll see how that ends up going there. We'll talk more about that later on, right? The other option was to see come a little bit higher, but even then, right, we did end up ripping through that zone here. So it's going to be interesting to see with dollar and what all these things are going to do here into the future, right? But yeah, really, again, we were saying here the most likely scenario was for dollar to come lower and then from there start to buy up, hopefully, into the future, right? Now we have gold as well, right? Gold, we were kind of still considering, the buy side. Although like, we had been obviously not in the best, I guess best record with gold on these Wyckoff Sundays, to be honest, because we have been kind of wanting these buys for a while, but we have been seeing a lot of sweeps take place, or rather just, lower lows take place. And so, yeah, we spoke about the potential for, now that we had essentially broken through some of these lows, right? We were kind of doing so on lower and lower volume. I believe we mentioned that as well. Let's see here if we did mention that. Yeah, we did, right? So right here, we were talking about the volume divergence on gold, right? So we had essentially very high point of volume in that wick, right? Lower volume there, but still seeing spikes, and lower volume there, but still seeing spikes. And again, we did still obviously see that hold, bigger time frame and smaller time frame wise. So this, I believe, is daily time frame, right? So we ended up seeing one more low that week, right? This ended up being the bottom of gold, right? So far, again, the volume divergence still held up. Like this low is still lower volume than this one, right? So now that we have that extra low, I mean, it kind of almost gives us even more divergence there, right here and there, right here and there, right, and then here and there. So again, still really showing that the volume is getting weaker while the lows are getting lower. So I feel like we really are starting to, get even more evidence for the idea that dollar can now start to buy up after we've been waiting for that for a while. So yeah, I mean, again, that was what we said last week. And again, that did end up playing out pretty nicely. NFP ended up shooting dollar to the upside as well, gold to the upside as well, and dollar to the downside. So yeah, we were speaking about two main zones, right? So the first one we spoke about was this zone here on gold. This zone on silver, right? And then we also spoke about the similar zone that also is happening on gold as well. And we were saying that we did like silver zone better, right? So let's go ahead and play this out. Potential here once again. Now, so because those are the facts, right? The facts are we're still in a structural low. The facts are there is some volume divergence. So maybe it's worth to take one last attempt after having this third sweep of the weekly lows, the daily. Personally, out of the two, I think I'd rather use silver, just because I like the low here a little bit better there on multiple time frames, right? 1 hour is nice, good liquidity sweep here. We did an internal sweep versus here we didn't really do an internal sweep. We just did order flow. So I'd rather play the internal sweep personally. It's unmitigated. We have an imbalance inside of it. So we'll see what happens down here. So yeah, compared to the two, we did say that, again, that relative low on gold we liked less because it wasn't really a sweep on liquidity. It was more of just a continuation of order flow. So this was that same relative zone here on gold. And obviously we do see that during the week price did take that one, right? But when we actually look at silver, price held that one perfectly, right? So, seeing how silver ended up holding, right? Gold ended up going through. The analysis on Wyckoff Sunday was pretty spot on. This was a much better zone here because the liquidity had been swept versus with gold, it still was yet to be swept. And that's why we saw gold sweep, but we didn't see silver sweep. Right? So silver, I'm going to take a wait and see approach, like I said. So now, so indices to me are looking scarier and scarier by the minute. About right. So for me last week, we were looking for sells on this. Obviously, did not end up playing out. With US 30 at least. US 30 was a monster, shooting through those highs. Continuing to go through, and I mean, really, it's just been reaccumulation after reaccumulation, essentially, right? Trap candles being created and stuff. This is our last reaccumulation here. That's really bigger time frame wise. These are a little bit more, smaller time frame. Right, I mean, seeing that being the spring there and this being the distribution, so distribution turning to accumulation there, and then just order flow, right, coming on its way higher. When we look at things like S&P, right, S&P ended up holding this previous low here, right, and then NASDAQ ended up, as well, holding these lows. So, but when we look at US 30, US 30 has definitely been the more bullish of the three indices last week, right? I mean, we just see US 30 continuing to rip through highs, but S&P 500 has still been holding those same worrisome highs that we've been seeing with NAS as well. It's been holding those same worrisome highs as well. So I do wonder how this is all going to play out. We'll talk about it more a little bit later, but yeah, as I saw this in the chat, Steve did catch that US 30 buy, from this, right? So I believe that was his main trade of last week, which is awesome to see. So good on you for going, with your own analysis. It definitely was clean looking at it. Actually, I think yours was over here, if I'm not mistaken. So you caught that on Monday, I believe, and then it ended up, really going ahead and making that higher high. I believe you caught a 1 to 10 on that. So beautiful to see, right? Really, really nice long opportunity there with it as well. I can't even lie. I mean, again, looking at it as this rather than this being like our moment to see the reversal, right? What we should have really seen was the sweep that did happen here at the bottom, right? Which is, again, right there, just going below that external point of liquidity, also going below the low, which is the low of the distribution, right? So seeing the low of the distribution, seeing that sweep out, and then seeing the order flow back up, I mean, yeah, it definitely makes sense to see that go from there, right? Yeah, to the all-time high, 10 risk to reward. Yeah, really good stuff there. Really good stuff there, Steve. So, yeah, US 30, again, did not go the way that we thought. Right, NASDAQ, we spoke about this zone here, I believe. Price ended up doing one more high, and then from there, the sell-off was still really clean. So NASDAQ still did end up giving that push down. And S&P as well even, right? S&P with an internal sweep from there, right, for this. So still kind of holding the structure we were talking about that we didn't like. So it's going to be interesting to see how this ends up all playing out, right? But yeah, US 30 did not hold that level there. It just ended up continuing to go through. Now, BTC, which was the last piece of the analysis from last week, right? So BTC over here, we were looking at for the potential long still, right? So this was right before I got stopped at break even on this idea here. And as we can see, BTC ended up just barely getting below this internal point of liquidity, right? We see from here, we have, this low here, right? The market comes up, right? And again, one thing that we definitely do see with this example is an extremely high volume low, right? So we see price here, very high volume. And what do we see happen there? Price ends up coming through on lower volume. Once again, we have that volume divergence. Again, this is the zone that we've been talking about for a while on Bitcoin, right? So I don't know if any of you guys bought on spot, like if you guys bought actual crypto. I was telling a bunch of my friends to buy crypto. So to me, it does look pretty decent, right? And again, even higher point of volume here, right? Lower there, and then lowest here, right? So institutional candle has also appeared here on the daily. So it's definitely an interesting setup for being an accumulation type of price action, right? So we'll see how this all ends up shaping up. Obviously, we've been kind of talking about the potential of shorts since up here, right? Our target was, I mean, when we were down here, we were looking for the buys up to 80K. Price perfectly taps 80 and then comes down. And then now we're starting to get that, 58K levels, right? So anything like, I mean, if you're getting close to 60, you're in a good place, right? We'll talk about that later on though. All right. So BTC, that was our idea there. We kind of spoke about our bigger time frame argument here for BTC as well, for why we think we could be seeing a bullish case, right? Start to form, right? Now you guys can go ahead and rewatch that yourself if you would like. But yeah, that's pretty much everything that we spoke about from last week. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and tap into the next week of price action and see what can potentially take place. All right. What'd you say here? I've got a mixed bag, mainly of XRP, but other crap I need to swap out to BTC. Yeah. I mean, BTC is just a reliable bet. It's always going to be the king of the market. The altcoins are good to have a percentage of your portfolio in because they got potential for higher gains. But if you got a lot of money that you just want to put in one place, I highly recommend BTC as it for the longer term. It's slowly becoming part of the financial system, and crypto as a whole is being part of the financial system, and Bitcoin will always be a part of that, right? So I think that's the safest bet you can have. Ethereum being the other safer bet, but even with Ethereum, it's like it's underperformed, in general. So yeah, we'll see how everything ends up going. We'll see how it all shapes up. Now, dollar will be first for what we're going to be looking for. Now, obviously, guys, bigger time frame wise, accumulation playing out beautifully, right? I think now we're really just waiting for that next phase of this, right? So here, wait, what'd you say here? You reckon wait for a retrace on BTC or what? Some in or whack some in now on spot. I mean, 62K is a nice price. Yeah, I mean, look, if you're willing to hold it for 3 years, 4 years, I think that BTC is in a good spot to hold for the longer term, even at 62, because our all-time high is 120, right? Every single time historically with our next cycle, the all-time high will double, right? We had 67K the cycle before, coming up to 122K the next cycle, right around double. I think we went from 12K to 60K for that cycle before that. So the highs are getting a little bit lower for sure, which makes sense as you get more institutional money coming in. But yeah, I think that if you're willing to, again, even just hold to all-time highs or whatever it might be, you're already doubling your money. So if you just want something that I think will be kind of a no-brainer longer term, that you kind of want to invest in, I think that BTC is good, to hold in for years. And then just dollar cost average, right? It's possible we come lower, like we said on the Wyckoff Sundays last week. We were talking about 40K as a potential level. That can definitely happen, right? But even then, that's not such a crazy, risk to reward there, for it. If we do happen to reach down to 40, but I think 60 is still a good entry point, right? I was reading that right now we're at a point where 50% of all Bitcoin is now in drawdown, right? So 50% of people that own Bitcoin are in drawdown at the moment, over 50%. So when you start to see that, that's when you want to start to accumulate. You want to start to be like, all right, obviously there's still going to be that shakeout that's going to take out and make those people who are in drawdown sell. That still has to happen. And so we might still see another drive, but in general, that's a good place to look. And again, the highs and lows are going to become less volatile as more money comes in, right? And we'll talk about that later on, but yeah. So back into it with dollar, right? So now dollar, what we've seen happen and what we've seen develop in the last week has been, obviously, we had this up candle, right? I believe we did speak about that the week before. And then now we ended up printing a new institutional candle the day before NFP. So that for me, NFP, seeing that institutional candle really get printed, right? Go ahead and taking the high of this trap candle and then seeing the push to the downside happen. For me, I mean, that's not really the best sign for, the longs to happen directly after. So personally, for me, I think when we look at BTC, really what we're waiting for is just for that reaccumulation to fully play out. So right now, last week, we really saw that distribution complete. Really over the last 2 weeks, we've seen that distribution start to happen. So now the goal is to go ahead and wait and see when are we going to get that accumulation really fully play out, right? And like we said on last week's Wyckoff Sundays, I mean, I think the plan is still really the same. I do still think that these levels here and here are going to be things that we need to keep our eye on. I think these are going to be zones that probably we will end up tapping into before we end up making that push towards 102. And again, I do think this reaccumulation is going to be kind of like that last easy buy of this accumulation. Because after we start to make the new highs, as you guys know, comes a little bit more difficult, right? You kind of just have to play reaccumulation expansions and stuff. And we will do that. But again, like, when we're still inside of the range, it's a little safer. When we start to get outside of the top of the range, that's when we start to be like, could it be a redistribution? Are we going to start to make lower lows again? Or is this accumulation really going to push through and create a big expansion, right? That's the question that has yet to be answered. So I think we're still in a good place to continue to buy, right? I don't think we need to reverse that bias at all. I think it's just about now, again, I probably either just picking one of these two zones, right? I do think that this imbalance here was created by a news event, so I do think it will get revisited. So personally for me, like, I'm kind of looking at dollar lower for the beginning of the week, right? And then from there, go ahead and look to reverse this, right? If we end up seeing, let's say from here, dollar gets straight up to this level, would I like to go ahead and short is kind of the question, I feel like. And truthfully, I'm not too confident in that, right? I'm not too confident in that happening. Like, if we just end up completely engulfing to the upside, I think it's possible that NFP is the sell that turns into the buy as well. Granted, I would love to see these imbalances get filled, and that is what I'm going to expect. But if we do end up just going straight up to here, guys, I'm personally not going to short. I'm just going to continue to look for longs, right? So just treating pullbacks as excuses to long, in examples like this. So I do think this low, both these lows, sorry. I do think both those lows should get taken. But again, it is possible that it doesn't and we just come back up. And by the way that this push to the downside happened, if we shoot ourselves right back up, I mean, that's starting to look a little bit more like a manipulation down to go ahead and buy up after that. But I think, guys, that we will get that push down, right? So that's really what I'm leaning towards, guys. I'm still looking for buys, not looking for shorts personally, right? I think that even if we did shoot right back up into this level, would I short it? Probably not, right? The only way that I would probably look to short is if we took this internal piece of liquidity here and we created an institutional candle above it, we created the order flow starting to bring us back down, and then we end up holding this level here, right? That's really the only scenario that I'd possibly look to look for this. So it would be like would be like if we work our way back up, right? We kind of go ahead and build up liquidity, we sweep, right? Getting above that internal piece, right? Keeping the external piece, and then from there, continuing the walk down essentially. That'd be really the only way that I would look at something like this. It would have to be like, again, using this as a point of liquidity, creating institutional candles there. Then maybe I would go for, again, a low risk opportunity, right? But I think more than likely, guys, we're not going to get that. I think that it's going to be a push down. And then we're just waiting to see, when is that accumulation going to really stop, right? When are we going to see those lows consistently get taken before we create that new high, right? So that's my idea there on dollar, all right? So what can that mean for things like Euro USD, right? So Euro USD here, as we can see, did end up giving, a big push up for NFP because of that, New York session, the New York session, because of that NFP news event with dollar going down, right? Euro USD obviously does the opposite. We spoke about this high here, and we did speak about, again, like for me personally, I want to see this whole price action. I want to see this whole price action here for Euro USD eventually become a redistribution. So I personally would really love to see just another high happen here, right? But granted, I mean, like, if we were to hold these levels, it could make sense, right? But I think that for me, that's personally what I'm going to want to see, right? But when I was looking at some of these bigger time frames here, like, 4-hour wise, for example, let me delete this here real quick. So 4-hour wise, I mean, this impulse up, right? Just barely getting above that down candle. It's basically an internal sweep, right? 2-hour as well, we can see that even better. Just barely getting above that candle, internal sweep, trap candle on the way down as well, right? Like, there's some decent price action here to see the market go ahead and come lower, right? So that is kind of the question, isn't it? I mean, like, is this retest here a sign that this high here from NFP is going to hold, right? Or is it just generating more liquidity so we can do one more sweep, right? I would love to see one more sweep, which I feel like I'm saying all the time. But you guys know, like, I would rather really see price get up and above extreme areas during those New York sessions, during those news events, to give us that best indication of, like, okay, this can be the high, right? Otherwise, we can sweep, and it's tough to know, that we're going to sweep, right? So, really when it comes down to it with Euro USD, we're in a bit of a place where, again, both things can happen. Same with dollar, right? But even with dollar, the fact that we haven't gotten to those imbalances, the fact that even there's this big imbalance down here, I would like to lean towards EU doing that same thing. And again, coming through these points of liquidity here, getting towards imbalances up here, and then turning this whole push to the upside into hopefully a redistribution that we can go ahead and take advantage of for one more easy short to the downside, right? So fingers crossed there that we can see that happen, for that. So that's EU. All right, let's go ahead and go into GU here as well. Now, GU, same kind of idea, right? Although we did get down and we targeted that low very well. We're getting back into order flow here, with this previous distribution. Personally, for me, I'd love to see that hold, right? So maybe as, EU goes ahead and shoots above its high, GU can go ahead and shoot above its high, start to get into this more extreme area. Very, very possible that we go ahead and take these highs here that are relatively equal, right? Like this one, and this one, right? Almost, relatively equal, right? Not exactly equal, but relatively equal. That can be a zone that we can sweep first, right? But one thing's for sure is we're going to want to see these highs here get taken, I would say, right? Same with EU. I would like to see both of those happen with dollar going ahead and driving lower, right? So again, still looking for the reaccumulation idea, right? Then there's AU and NU, which are things that, again, for me, we're going to want to just hold off on, right? Really let this get a little bit more extreme. I mean, obviously, this is going to be our previous redistribution as a whole. This is the IC on top of our redistribution. That's going to be really where we're going to want to see AU get into as well if we're going to go ahead and redistribute down. Granted, we are in kind of an interesting buy zone here, but we did end up, again, just barely taking out the high and then coming down. So personally, for me, I want to see order flow continue here. So again, push to the upside, come down, right, retrace into that level, and then continue to the downside there with AU, and then same thing really here with NU, right? Get a little bit higher, right? Oh, I believe it's lower time frame here, right? But yeah, getting back into zones like this one, right? Zones like this one, right? I think that overlap there is going to be a good place to go ahead and look for continuations short. But personally, for me, I like AU and EU the best for those potential ideas. All right, guys. Let's go ahead and move into metals. Those are the main currencies I like to go into. Metals, like I was saying earlier, right, we do have to keep in mind that I think that volume divergence has some potential. So the idea here would be to see, can we get XAU to basically pull back for us, right? Daily time frame wise, the most ideal zone would be essentially this last down move, right? Can we get a retrace back into 4080 to go ahead and see the next rally happen to the upside? Again, we are inside of a structural low, right? This is a structural reaccumulation. We do have the volume divergence coming down. I mean, we kind of have to, go for it, right? I do think it's still there. Previous lows, I mean, honestly, weren't as clean. I think that for me, looking at it in hindsight and stuff, this low here should have been a dead giveaway that we're probably going to come lower, right? Such a high point of volume, right? Such a big wick on the daily. Those were red flags, right? That I hadn't shown here on Wyckoff Sundays. But now seeing how it's all playing out, this is a much better setup than we've had before. So that's what I'm thinking here with gold. So hopefully getting back down into this trap candle, right? Hopefully below at least at minimum, this wick here, which I do think will lead us into 4080, right? So below 4100 and, around 4080 is going to be really the priority. But basically this last sweep is going to be the idea there. And then, yeah, silver, same thing, right? I did do a little quick short there. But yeah, unless this turns into a redistribution, right, which it is kind of tightly going up, but I do think that, seeing this order flow continue just makes the most sense for the continuations long, right? Ideally would be like probably getting into this area here, right, starting to take out some of these internal lows, get into an extreme area, and then from there long, kind of similar to gold zone, right? So if gold were to come down to there, right, maybe silver could come down as well into some of these previous zones. It looks like silver's relative zone is right here, right, compared to gold. But it is a much different structure because silver did not sweep and gold did sweep, right, last week. So, yeah, but the buys there from Wyckoff Sunday last week were clean. So we have gold there, we have silver. All right, now let's go into indices. So indices, truthfully, guys, I'm still in a similar mindset. I do think that although US 30 was doing its thing and it was going higher and higher, I think that it's in the distribution phase personally, right? The last high that we had was a lower volume high than the previous ones that we've seen happen, right? And, we're seeing two different reaccumulations here. Perhaps this sweep can be our last one. We do see like relatively equal highs that are playing out in this level, right? We do see this last 4 hour up candle, right? Even just from here, to be honest, big 4-hour up move, trap candle that happened there. And then as we get even lower, right, we're starting to see ICs on the way down, right? So like if we start to go a little bit more specific, right here, right here, and right here. So I'm leaning towards it, right? Especially because S&P and NAS are still in a place that they could be holding that bearish order flow. I'm definitely paying attention to this to come lower, right? We do see NAS also was one that did not sweep its low, right? As we can see here. So I do think that this wick here is going to be a target here at 28,100 and 200, basically 28,200. So yeah, I mean, basically just looking for this order flow to continue. Out of everything, I like NAS the best. US 30 also is probably the lowest risk type of play. Honestly, this might even happen on Sunday, right? By the looks of the way that US 30 is happening here, right? Hopefully we can get into a little bit more of an extreme area and we don't necessarily hold that. But actually, I think I'm going to be paying attention to this today. Try and take a look and see, all right, can this make sense to see the market head lower, right? So fingers crossed, we'll take a look, right? And yeah, for NAS and stuff, right, really inside of this push to the upside as a whole, right? And I'm still going to make the brave attempt to think, all right, can we actually get these shorts to take place, right? At least towards 28,200, right? Unless this whole thing is a reaccumulation, which it could be. But again, I'm going to lean towards that because of the price action we've been having in the highs, because of how difficult it has been to short and how simple it's been to buy. I think that we will end up eventually getting this distribution to play out and the divergence as well, right? US 30 taking those highs, S&P and NAS holding the order flow, showing some more distribution signs with this sweep, with that sweep, right? So it's interesting. It is definitely interesting here for the indices. I'm going to call the shorts for this week, all right? Now, crypto, right? Again, like we spoke about, it's going to be the same idea, right? Crypto going ahead and seeing the lows here get taken, right? Seeing the market go ahead and trade back into those levels, I think could be a play, right? Granted, we could get even lower, but like, again, seeing the daily institutional candle there in that level, the same way that we kind of have a daily down candle as well on things like gold. I mean, it could be there, right? We'll definitely see what happens in the high, right? If we end up like, let's say, getting a sweep in the highs, you know, something like this, right? And then we end up having a very high volume high there. Maybe we do end up getting one more sweep and then continuing. But yeah, whenever price does get back into this level here at 60K, I'm going to be interested to see what happens at the top of BTC to see if it can make sense to go for those longs in that low. All right, guys, and then ETH and stuff as well is in a very good zone, right? We are in a good zone on ETH as well to potentially long from. So fingers crossed on everything, guys. I'm leaning towards the longs for those assets. All right, so all in all, guys, one more sell-off on dollar. Pay attention to it because it'll probably be the last one before we go to 102. And then once we hit 102, it's going to become a little bit more difficult, right? But so far, our entire series for Wyckoff Sundays, we've been talking about this accumulation. And here we are, man. Here we are about to break those levels. So, you know, definitely a good call out from the last couple of months that, you know, members have been eating off of, which I love to see. So yeah, really, we're just going to look for one more. Let's look for one more reaccumulation play. Give us that opportunity to go for another long with the context of the higher time frame accumulation to go ahead and reach this high here at 102, which is this high here at dollar. All right, guys. So that's that for me, guys. All right, that's my analysis for the week to come and for what happened last week. All right, hopefully you guys understand. Hopefully you guys are going to go ahead and lock in for this week. And I will see you guys on the next live stream. All right, much love, much appreciation. Peace out. Deuces, guys. Bye-bye.